Now, Jeremy Hunt has also officially declared that the British economy is in a recession.
With the high energy prices, high inflation rates, global economic weaknesses, high interest rates, the 2020 Brexit.
The struggle to get the economy to recover is not going to be easy.
UK's GDP is expected to contract from the fourth quarter through to the second quarter of 2023.
Central banks printed money a lot, which has now contributed to the inflation that we're seeing.
Here's a backstory on UK's economic errors and what that will mean for African countries, Kenya specifically.
I think the UK has evolved over the years from the ages of industrialization, where it is mostly industrial economy, industrial-driven economy, to now where it's predominantly services, so professional services, hospitality, tourism also has quite a bit, retail, and consumption basically has quite a bit of pool in the UK economy.
The pound has fallen against the dollar, plunging the UK into an economic crisis. While this year might seem like the country's worst economically, there are few others that remain memorable to the country's economy. Between 1955 and 2020, Britain's largest quarterly fall was experienced in 1974. The Office for National Statistics accounts for a 2.7% fall, a fall which took the country over 14 quarters to recover from. UK's economy is almost certainly plunging into a recession. For an economy to go into recess, it means it has had 2 successive quarters of decline in its GDP. And when a recession goes from bad to worse, then the economy falls into a depression.
Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt, interestingly, has unveiled a new budget of sorts that's been described as an austerity budget. He's announced $65 billion in terms of tax hikes and massive spending cuts. Now, Jeremy Hunt has also officially declared that the British economy is in a recession.
With the high energy prices, high inflation rates, global economic weaknesses, high interest rates, the 2020 Brexit, UK's GDP is expected to contract from the fourth quarter through to the second quarter of 2023.
But Jeremy Hunt told the Parliament that the economy will shrink next year and has stressed that there is no way to avoid the painful fiscal medicine to ensure that Britain could in fact build on the recent restoration of calm in the financial markets.
What does this mean and how did the UK get here in the first place?
Let's start with former Prime Minister Liz Truss and former Finance Minister Kwasi Kwarteng and the quote-unquote mini-budget. Initially, the Treasury was pleased by the mini-budget, but slowly it started falling apart.
A plan that will steer the country into an economic growth. Among other proposals, what's been the most shocking proposal in this budget was a plan to cut down on the additional 50% on the income tax rate on earnings above £150,000 per year to 45%. Just as expensive as it sounds, for the UK this means borrowing more than you can afford.
Normally, recession is usually considered temporary because the government will try to step in and use its instruments, whether it's fiscal, on the fiscal side, which is to deal with spending, or the monetary side, which is the central bank trying to put in interventions to erode or reduce the impact of recession or to get the country out of it. I think even before Liz Truss came in, things were still not looking very good, and I guess that's why also politically it's been a shambles. And of course Liz Truss with her proposals, especially her tax proposals, was very ill-advised to say the least, because she was going for tax cuts, but the tax cuts were favoring the rich. Kenya, I think we are trying to take the opposite of what Liz Truss is proposing, where the new government trying to tax or get more money from guys who are wealthier.
A ripple effect experienced after this fiscal budget saw lenders withdrawing about 40% of mortgages from the market.
There's a huge, I could say, linkage between the economic performance and the housing market, how the housing market is doing. And because historically interest rates have been very, very low in the UK especially, they have been, people have been getting mortgages easily because the interest rates are not crazy. But because of what is happening now, the UK has inflation of around 10.9%, which is way above what this Bank of England is targeting. The Bank of England targets 2% as their inflation target. So 10% is 5 times higher. And as a result, what they've had to do is increase interest rates. And so because interest rates are naturally going to increase, then for people who have mortgages, especially on floating interest rate, then it's going to be more expensive. So you have this coupled with what they are going through in terms of the energy crisis and the general contraction of economic activity, then investors would have the feeling that people are going to struggle to pay their mortgages.
For Rishi Sunak, the country's third prime minister in less than 2 months now, and Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, this is a tough card they have been dealt with, a situation they have to save swiftly. Abandoning VAT-free shopping for non-UK visitors, cancelling the 19% basic rate on income tax and keeping it at 20%, among others. A big chunk of the mini budget scrapped off.
And then now, I think with Rishi Sunak coming on board, I think because of his background as an investment banker with Goldman Sachs before moving to the Treasury, I think also what that signaled to the international market that this guy should have a handle on the economy and how things should be done. So that has given the slide a brief reprieve.
Shy, the new British government under Rishi Sunak is trying to play safe and not repeat the mistakes while striving to restore the confidence in investors.
The struggle to get the economy to recover is not going to be easy, because what we saw during the pandemic was central banks printed money a lot, which has now contributed to the inflation that we're seeing. But now what Rishi has to do, it's a balancing act.
Kenya is one of UK's biggest trading partners, from tea to horticulture to fresh vegetables. Arguably, when any economy plunges into recession, they cut down on expenditure to raise revenues. Predictions show that if the UK's economy falls into a recession, Kenya as one of its trading partners will suffer in one way or another. Here is how.
With the recession, naturally, as I said earlier, people tend to reduce your spending. You try to save as much as possible, and you only save what you deem is necessary.
With Brexit, UK's decision to exit the European Union, Kenya has been dealt its fair share of the effects of this exit.
What Brexit did was that it made the UK more volatile. In terms, it made them more susceptible to shocks. And we are actually seeing that manifesting now with the crisis in the UK being harder than what the other countries are. They are sort of isolated. People call it a very expensive experiment that they did, while they can sort of get their own bilateral agreements and make their own decisions independent from the EU. Also, it's making them slightly less attractive as an investment option or as a trading partner for countries that especially primarily traded with EU countries. Remittances essentially are funds sent by citizens working outside of the country, sent into the country. So how it works essentially is money is sent to the economy, and this money now circulates in the Kenyan economy. So it's a dollar earned, for instance, in the US. Instead of being spent in the US, it's going to be spent in the Kenyan economy. So the question or the challenge that most people usually have is to try to get the remittances to be as productive as possible in the local economy.
In a report by the Central Bank of Kenya for the month of September, remittances sent from the Arab countries amounted to about 3.2 billion. Although remittances from the UK have been ahead of Saudi Arabia specifically, they have been dropping since June.
Number one, it's a natural consequence or effect of what is happening in the UK. Because everything is shooting up, prices of things are shooting up, then it means disposable income is reducing. Because for most guys, your gross income is still the same, but your expenses have shot up, so the amount that you can send home essentially is reducing. The question that I would have is on the quality of remittances. In the short run, I don't think there's any impact that would be seen, but in the long run, I think there's a possibility of the kind of quality of opportunities that we try to create for people, which naturally better quality opportunities then has a better impact in the economy. I think we should have to focus on the investment side to try to boost, because consumption at this point seems to be tricky because everyone is focused on how am I going to pay my energy bill. And naturally, when you're in crisis mode, people tend to save more because you do not know how the next months are going to be. So if you're able to take advantage of that and find a way to convert those savings into investments, then it's going to help the economy grow. I think the challenge for the Kenyan government is to, if I can call it, diversify or try to look for other markets other than the UK for this product, so that whatever reduction in demand that we're getting from the UK is offset by potential new markets. Yeah, after saying all that, it's a messy situation. For me, I think what they would need to try to do is to try to improve the savings rate, if as much as possible, have the amount saved available, and then this is now what can be used in the form of investments, and trying to ease the pressure of his government and government interventions to try to help the economy to grow.